This story happened in October of 2004, back when I was still a third-year high school student. My friends and I stuck around the school late at night. After our annual Halloween party, we had agreed to try out my friend's Ouija board. It wasn't the brightest idea, but we needed a thrill. We found a nice spot under a huge Narad tree and proceeded with our half-fast ritual. There were 5 of us, 2 boys and 3 girls. We were all expecting some kind of paranormal contact. Rumors had it our school was haunted, but we've never really experienced anything firsthand. And it was Halloween when all the spirits came out to play. We all wanted to get spooked. Also, we've never seen a Ouija board firsthand before, so we were pretty excited. Our school was an old Spanish colonial house. It's built in the 1800s when the Spaniards still occupied the Philippines. We were in a section of the school that doesn't get used often, located beside a creepy old Jesuit house. People only go there when they needed to use the restroom, store equipment on one of the sheds, or make out with their boyfriends or girlfriends. We sat down in the middle of an open space, with only an exposed bare bulb nearby, illuminating the surroundings. We were all having a laugh, scaring each other with what-if scenarios. It was your typical dumb kids doing dumb things. My friend who brought the Ouija board proceeded to place it in the middle of our circle. If I remember correctly, it was the glow and knock version, which we found hilarious. But it gave us the ability to see what was written in the dark. Not knowing what to do and going after what we've seen in movies, we all proceeded to place our index finger on top of the planchette. We sat there looking at each other until one of us said, "What's next?" We didn't know if there was a proper way to start the ritual. Plus, the board didn't come with instructions, so we decided to just throw in a question. "Is anyone there?" I called out into the darkness. "If there are spirits living here, please talk to us." One of the girls joined in. We clearly had no idea what we were doing. Still, nothing. Not even the slightest bit of wind. One of my friends jerked the planchette, and the girl who brought the Ouija board screamed, breaking the silence. We all laughed at how ridiculous it was. After a bit of joking around, we decided to give it another go. We all placed our index fingers on the planchette once more and asked, "If there's anyone there, we would like to make contact." "Don't break the circle," one of my friends jokingly said. "Shut up," I whispered. We were just about ready to give up when the wind started to pick up. The stillness broke and the darkness around us seemed to move. Just a coincidence, we thought. "Okay, don't break the circle," I yelled out. "Is anyone there?" I was excited. It was like a scene from a movie with dirt and dead leaves swirling around us. "Guys, I'm scared," my friend sitting beside me said. "My mom warned me about playing with forces we don't know." "Did you die here? Were you killed during the war? Are you the headless priest that roams these halls? Do you know Jose Rizal, our national hero? Are you a hottie?" my friend giggled. At this point, we were all throwing random stupid questions. Nothing. "This is bullshit. I don't want to do this anymore," my friend said, exasperated. We were all thinking the same. Just then, a group of dogs from the neighboring house started barking at us through the chain-link fence. These 6 dogs were growling and showing teeth. We all screamed, and without finishing the ritual, bolted right out of there. We didn't see each other until after Halloween break, and this is where the story gets creepy. One of the girls told us about a weird experience she had the night after playing with the Ouija board. She had gotten home late. After hanging out with her friends from the neighborhood, when she realized she forgot the keys to her house. So, she called her brother up, who was then still sharing a room with her, and what he said crept the hell out of her. He swore she was already home. He claimed to have seen her walk in a while ago, and that she looked really tired and saw her head straight to bed. Creepy, but no need to freak ourselves out, was all we thought. Besides, her brother must have just been tired and seeing things. But then, my other friend started telling us about an encounter she had that Halloween night. She was going up to her room when the lights started flickering as she was ascending the staircase. Your typical horror movie visuals, shrug it off to faulty wiring. But just then, she saw the door to her room open, and a dark figure stepped out and stood atop of their staircase. She couldn't make out the entity's face, but she recounted that she couldn't move and felt utter dread as the figure stared down at her. "No way," my best friend who just joined in the conversation said in disbelief. "Something happened to me as well." He recalled that he was sleeping one night when he woke up feeling really uncomfortable. He described his vision as having TV-like static, and a feeling of heaviness surrounded him. He looked around the room, and that's when he saw a bloody, charred face with piercing red eyes grinning at him through the window. I couldn't believe what I was hearing because I had an almost run-in with death that night. After the ritual, I was sleeping in our sedan on the way home after fooling around with the Ouija board. When I felt our car jerk, I woke up instantly. Looking out the window, I found out that we'd been hit by a huge oil tanker. I panicked and leaped out of the car. Luckily, my mom and I survived the crash, since the front of the car was a total wreck. I still don't have an explanation why those things happened to us, but thank God nothing happened after that. I never played or gotten near a Ouija board ever since. When I was younger, I'd go visit my grandparents all the time. They lived in a one-floor house with an unfinished basement. I never liked it down there. It felt small for a big basement. There was a little door down there that was for storage, and I always got a horrible feeling when going close to it. And let me add that this was a newer house that was about 6 years. Now, during the time I was about 6 or 7, I felt so uncomfortable going down there even when I was with someone. I didn't like it. I remember going down there with my grandma to help with something. She had to run upstairs because someone rang the doorbell. She said she would be right back even though she knew how. I felt about being alone down there, but I nodded and said okay. She was gone, and I was alone, and I started to get a bad feel in the pit of my stomach. I didn't move and didn't want to. Even though the lights were on now, this is where everything started happening, and it still gives me chills. The lights started to flicker, and I started to hear noises and what sounded like talking, and it was not coming from upstairs, but in the storage room. I heard someone say my name. Here is the part that freaks me out the most. The voice sounded like my grandma. I was confused as hell. How am I hearing her when she is upstairs? I didn't want to move, but me being the curious one I am, I started moving towards the storage room door. The closer I got, worse the bad feeling came. When I got to the door, the lights turned off in the basement. Wanted to run upstairs and hide, go home somewhere that wasn't the basement. I heard my name again for the second time. My grandma's voice asking me to open the door to help her, so I did, and I regret it. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. Couldn't hear anything but faint laughing that felt like forever. But then the laughing stopped, and the lights turned back on in the basement, and I felt a little bit better with the lights back on. But the downside, I could see a little in the storage room. I saw a small clown doll in the storage room, and my grandma hates clowns with a passion and wants nothing to do with them. So why is there a clown doll? I have no damn idea. Then the lights turned on in the storage room. I saw red that looked like blood all over the place. I screamed and blacked out, and the next thing I knew, I was laying on the couch, my grandma, looking at me and asking if I was okay. Hey. I have no idea if that was real or a dream, but it sure as hell felt real. I live in an old apartment building. I've been here for about 2 years, and my roommate and I have had very few scary experiences so far, except for this one that happened last summer. It was around 4 a.m. when we were woken from a dead sleep by the fire. Alarms going off throughout our entire 4-story apartment building. Seeing as this place is occupied mostly by seniors, we figured someone had left a pot on the stove again. I grumbled and blindly grabbed for a blanket. Last time we had a false alarm. I was left shivering and barefoot on the sidewalk waiting for the fire department. I wasn't about to let that happen again. My roommate and I put on our shoes. I grabbed my phone and keys, and we poked our head out into the hallway. Nothing seemed off. The hall was empty. No one else had come out of their apartments yet. Reluctantly, my roommate and I walked down the hall toward the lobby. We figured our neighbors would soon follow suit. It was only when we went through the lobby and out the front door that we realized something was actually wrong. A handful of people who had already come out of the building were running and shouting about how the building was actually on fire this time. Followed them around to the side of the building. As more and more people fled in their pajamas, and to our horror, we saw an apartment on the top floor belching out flames. People were frantic, searching for water, a ladder, anything. Someone remarked that there was a lady who lived in that apartment who had mobility issues, and she needed to be rescued now. And where the hell was the fire department? My roommate was quite disturbed by the whole scene. So we decided to go back to the front of the building, away from the fire. On our way, we saw a guy jump off his balcony to the ground. He rolled when he landed, but I think it still really hurt, judging from how he sat on the grass and groaned for a while. He was lucky to only be on the second floor. There was chaos, yelling, screaming, an odd mix of panic and disinterest, especially among the senior citizens who didn't even want to leave the building because using the stairs was so difficult. The fire department arrived much quicker than they ever had before, seeing as this was a real emergency. And it was in tea long before elderly ladies in nightgowns were being rescued via ladders and wheeled off to the hospital next door. At one point, the man who lived below the apartment on fire had a screaming episode at one of the landlords. The one that looked like a walking skeleton with an oxygen tank and a scooter. By the time the fire department got everything under control, it was around 6 or 7 a.m. Sun was up, and people were beginning their morning commute. The fire department had blocked off our whole street, which must have been a pain. And the entire population of my building sat on the curb in pajamas and blankets. Little kids, old people, broke college kids, the works. The community really pulled together that morning. The public bus service gave us a couple buses to sit and warm up in instead of standing around on the chilly sidewalk. Paramedics handed out blankets and assessed injuries. The people in the surrounding houses were kind enough to bring us water. And snacks. One lady brought a serving tray with mugs of tea from her own kitchen and offered it to anyone she could find. My mom came down to rescue my roommate and I, even though she lived an hour outside of town and hadn't even showered yet. She brought us breakfast and a change of clothes, as we didn't know when we'd be allowed back into the building. The most disturbing details of what had just taken place that morning came to us as we were waiting on the bus. Everyone was talking about the fire, of course, but one man had a particularly horrifying detail to add. He'd heard through the grapevine that the lady whose apartment caught fire never made it out of the building. Sadly, we suspected as much, with her mobility issues and all. But there was more. The firefighters apparently found her in the hall. She had made it out of her apartment, but couldn't escape the smoke. Whether she died from smoke inhalation or from burns, we aren't sure. But one thing that man said that sticks with me is that someone said that as they stood outside and watched the flames, they heard the woman screaming, "Help me, I'm burning." I've always been afraid of burning to death, and the idea that my neighbor may have had such a horrifying end is deeply disturbing. I know the man who lived below her heard her screaming. He wouldn't stop talking about it. I think he ended up with a form of PTSD from this event, and I don't blame him. We were all brought to a community center where the fire department and emergency response volunteers helped bring some clarity to the situation and told us what to expect. Everyone was very kind and sympathetic to us. Whatever we needed, they provided for us. I think all of that is pretty standard procedure. But still, I was extremely thankful to the kindness of the volunteers, firefighters, paramedics, and Good Samaritans. It was pretty surreal to be in a situation like that. We had almost nothing on. Usmai's roommate Hadanti thought to grab her phone, so she had to borrow mine to let her family know she was okay. We had no money, no ID, none of the essentials, and we had no idea how long we would be homeless. I hadn't been so happy to have my mom with me in a long time. I felt like a scared little girl, even if I didn't show it. We were lucky. The fire happened on the opposite end of the building from us. Our unit was totally unaffected, and we were one of the few allowed back into our apartment that same day. The building stunk of smoke for weeks. Even though the fire took place on the 4th floor in a single apartment, the damage was extensive. Even on the ground floor, the walls were blackened with ash. When they attempted to start fixing up the building, they found asbestos in the walls. A few people were forced to move out of their apartments, and we're talking people who had lived there for around 30 years. I remember the night we were allowed back into our apartment. I wanted to box up my most important possessions and keep them in my car, as if I thought the building was going to catch fire again. The home didn't feel safe anymore, and it wouldn't for several weeks. It would take a long time for us to hear anything about what caused the fire. Last I heard, a space heater was to blame, but I don't know for sure. In the days that followed, the fire was featured on the front page of the local paper. The family that lived just down the hall from us were featured in the picture. The article spelled out details that I had already heard. It labeled the guy that lived below the fire as a hero for attempting to save the lady upstairs. It was a valiant effort, but there was nothing he could have done without endangering himself. I feel sorry for him, and I often wonder if the guilt keeps him up at night. Sometimes I think about the lady who passed away in this building. I listen to a lot of ghost stories, so I wonder if her spirit haunts this place. Her sudden and horrifying death would be the sort of thing to make a ghost linger on Earth, wouldn't it? So many things left unfinished. Regardless, I hope she'll rest at peace, and I hope that my neighbors have been able to find some semblance of peace as well. 4 months later, we've regained a sense of normalcy. Things are back to how they were before. If you ignore the orange tarps around the side of the exterior, the restoration vans that come and go every day, and the security guards stationed in the lobby, the damaged wing is still closed, while they try and sort out the asbestos situation. But for those of us who live on the other end of the building, things are relatively normal. Hope they stay that way. This happened to me 2 to 3 years ago. I was around 23 at the time. I am a female, and I live in Romania. One night I was coming home from class. Master's classes start after 6 p.m. and end at 10 p.m. At around 11 p.m., I had to take the subway for about 12 stops. The destination I had to get off at was the end of the line for the subway. At that time, there wouldn't be many people in the subway. I'm a pretty lonely person. All I need is my headset and my music, and I am good to go. Said and done, I plug in my music. I pick the furthest chair in the subway, away from the only 2 people that were taking the subway with me at that time. So far, so good. ... Until I see with the corner of my eye a silhouette approaching me and sitting right next to me. It was a man, fairly built, dark hair, wearing glasses, a black shirt with a black hoodie, and a sickening smile. He doesn't engage in talking with me, but would just stare at my phone as I would browse through my music. I can hear him breathe heavily, not like painfully, but still, like he was feeling something very strong. I feel uneasy, so I decide to change my seat and go even further behind, trying to avoid him without looking like a freak myself. I'd K to whom. There was just another person with us the whole way. I guess that scared me even more. I pick a new chair, sit down, plug my headset again, and proceed with the remaining 6/12 stops on my way home. I see the silhouette growing bigger and bigger, and a breeze running on my skin as I realize the guy is again sitting right next to me, glancing in midair, dead eyes, a big smile staring right into my phone. I panic. There are still 4 stops to go. I have nowhere to hide. I look after the other person in the subway, trying to sit next to her, thinking that strength comes on numbers. She is no longer there. I start shaking a bit, but not allowing the creeper to notice me being vulnerable. I stand up, go to the door, and just decide to stand until my stop comes. This way he won't sit next to me, right? Wrong. He comes straight after me, sits on the chair right near the door, and because he couldn't see my phone on which he was so focused so far, from that angle he fixates me right in my soul with his black dead eyes. Says, "Hi, gorgeous. Why are you avoiding me?" I am freaking out as I look at my phone trying to call my boyfriend or message him, and he stops me by saying, "I know no one will help you. You wolf, send an SOS message by now. I know you didn't." That moment I realize I'm cornered. He has been focusing on my phone to see who I was talking to, trying to figure out if I panic, trying to see if I would ask someone for help. Cornered me bad. I had the luck to reach my stop as I would delay any reaction or ignore him so that he would repeat whatever he wanted to say. I drop off and run for the exit, not looking back. I get out at the surface, and I don't see him anymore. At this moment, I put my phone in my purse and realize I had pepper spray with me all along. My heartbeat comes back to normal, as I know at least I have something to defend myself with. But still a long way to get home, and who knows if he is alone or not. I walk rather fast for maybe 5 minutes from the metro and feel a hand grabbing my wrist hard and pulling me back. Another hand covering my mouth, disabling me from screaming my lungs out. It was him. The same black hoodie, dark hair, and dead-eye stalker. He was furious and said, running from me. "How dare you run away from me? You should be honored I give you attention." I am fairly built for a woman, 80 kilograms and 1.75 meters tall. So I guess he thought men don't find me beautiful or something, and should feel blessed a creep like him stalks me and tries to hurt me. Now my phone is in my bag. I can't call the police. I can't reach for the pepper spray. I panic. I can't punch him in the crotch. I can't scratch him as I don't have long nails. His hand is still on my mouth. What do I do? I did the most desperate and disgusting thing I could think of, just to save my life. ... I played along. I used my other hand to touch the inside of his thigh and mumble, I'm sorry, while his hand was on my mouth. He took his hand off my mouth, and I repeated that I'm sorry. I didn't realize he was just flirting. He left his guard down and took his hat off my wrist. He asked me for my phone number and address to drop me off, but I refused, saying I'd rather add him on Facebook, and he agreed. I told him I'd reach for my phone, but instead picked the pepper spray and got him sprayed all over his face. Made sure I'd cover his both eyes, nose, mouth, even his ears and hands. He instantly got all red, suffocating from the pepper and swelling. I called the police, told them what happened and what I did. They asked me if he is immobilized, and I said yes, as the effect wears off in 45 minutes. The police arrived there 5 minutes later to see me shaking like a leaf and a man on the ground, swollen like a pumpkin, throwing up and swearing me between gasps of breath. He was arrested, and the police told me. They have been looking for him for the past week. As they discovered the body of a 24-year-old woman in his apartment, fairly built lady, 177 meters tall, 75 kilograms. Red hair. I have red hair too. The woman was his girlfriend, and ever since, he's never gotten back to the apartment. I do not know what he wanted to do with me. I can understand why he targeted me due to the similarities, but ... Stranger in the subway, stalking women at midnight, trying to befriend them, or even worse, ... murder. Then I hope to God you and I never meet again. I'm a tall, yet extremely skinny guy, and I'm 21 years old. I was 20 years old at the time, and it was the week before the presidential election in the United States. I felt a lot of anxiety about the election, as I live in Manhattan, and there are a lot of crazy people in that city, who act as if the entire world is going to end over one simple election. So, feeling exhausted from both that and my university, I decided to visit my friends in Moscow. I'm half Russian and have an apartment in the city center of Moscow. I had never been in Russia while it snowed, and luckily during this time it was snowing. The city looked beautiful, and the vibe I had from the city was perfect. I felt so calm, safe, and the whole world around me just seemed so quiet. Unfortunately, I had severe jet lag and fell asleep around 5 p.m. Moscow time that day. My friend went home to get ready for her classes the next day, and I woke up around 3 a.m. I could not fall back asleep, so I decided to go outside and take a walk around my area, while it calmly snowed. I walked around the dead empty city in my district and took in all of the beautiful architecture and snow falling down heavily. I don't remember for how long I was walking, but I crossed a bridge and entered deeply into a neighborhood I was not familiar with. I thought it would be okay, as I was in my district, and sort of remembered the way back home. I eventually came up to this ginormous entrance of a block unit with a beautiful gate on it. The gate was opened, so I decided to step inside. It looked like a small little compound or something similar to it. If anyone is from Russia, they probably know what I'm talking about. Everything was dead quiet, and the trees canopied in the square complex. To the right was an extremely tall building with a ginormous door. I peeked inside and saw a lightly dimmed lobby, typical Russian lobby vibe, with a blinking fluorescent light. I held on the door, and to my surprise it was unlocked. I entered into the massive building and looked around. I saw many stairs wrapping around in a square leading up, a small typical Russian elevator, and to the right of the stairwell stairs that led down. The door at the bottom of the stairs was open. I absolutely do not know what came over me, as I am not one to adventure alone, but as I stated earlier, everything felt so beautiful. The quiet vibe of snow-covered Russia had me feeling so peaceful, and I decided to just tiptoe on down into the basement to take a closer look. I walked into the room with the open door and threw on my flashlight on my phone. I saw an extremely long tunnel, and I could not see the end of it. I felt threatened by it and got extremely uncomfortable. I decided it was best for me to leave. When I turned around, the only light that was entering the tunnel was from outside of the doorway. I saw standing in the door a black silhouette. I quickly understood it was the outline of a person who was at least 5 inches taller than me. So I would say he was about 6'5". He was massive, and my stomach dropped so hard with my heart beginning to beat super quickly. He started to speak to me in Russian, but as my Russian isn't fluent, I did not understand everything he said. "I'm sorry, I don't speak Russian," I said to him in Russian. "You speak English?" he said in English to me. I told him I did, and he asked me if I knew where I was. No, I told him, as my mind started to fill up with a lot of different scenarios. One of which with me having to run down this tunnel and getting lost to avoid him if he chased me. These tunnels used to be used for Red Army soldiers to move from one place to another during the war, he explained to me. This whole building used to be a bunker for Red Army soldiers. I said AA to show some interest, and began to move towards the left while facing him in attempts to get him to move out of the doorway. "This whole place is now apartments. I have one on the top floor. You should come see it," he said to me. "It's quite late and I think I should be going," I said. However, he grabbed my small wrist with a lot of strength and led me towards the stairs to go to the main floor of the lobby. "I have a view you'll love," he called the small elevator. "And if any of you have ever been to Russia, you will know exactly what type of elevator it is. It's a type that can barely fit 2 people. He began telling me about how he just got back from Chicago and that his husband loved Chicago as well. This started to have me panicking, as I thought to myself that there would be another man up to where he was bringing me, and I would have 2 men overpower me. Once we go to his room, I looked at this massive studio apartment he had. He had only candles to light the room, with a lot of tapestries dividing it up, with both the candle and moonlight shining through it to create a super eerie vibe. I looked out his window as he instructed me, and I have to admit, the view was amazing. I got a panoramic view of Togonskaya and of the Kotelnicheskaya embankment building. I then started scoping around, looking for an opportunity to get out of there. "Where's your husband?" I asked. He looked at me and laughed. "Oh, he's dead." He then picked me up, and I asked him what he is doing. He brought me into another room and began to touch me inappropriately. He ran his hand down my back and took my phone from my back pocket. I did not realize he did this, as I was just in horror as this man licked me and said explicit things in Russian. I tried to pull away, but it made him squeeze and corner me even harder. After about 10 minutes of this, he told me to wait a moment. He went into his bathroom, and in this moment, I immediately sprinted over to the door. There were no lights, so I went to pull out my phone for the flashlight, only to my horror, the phone was missing from my back pocket. I almost nearly had a heart attack, as I realized I would have to go back into that bedroom to get my phone. I darted back into the room and saw my phone lying on a couch he had next to his bed. I grabbed it and ran for the door. I unlocked 2 locks on one door, and when I opened that one, there was an outer door. I managed to get it open. As I ran out, the adrenaline was so high in me, I ignored the elevator and went straight for the stairs. Ran around in circles down it for what seemed like forever until I finally reached the bottom. I practically leaped down a few steps to go out of the lobby and to the main door I had entered from. It wouldn't open as I pushed as hard as I could on it. I then began to start sobbing to myself and cursing. The thought of me having to go back into that tunnel to hide again from him came over me, and I almost began to accept that as a reality at this point. I quickly tried to pull myself together and noticed the typical button you should press to disable the magnet that holds the door locked. I pressed it, heard the monotoned beep that follows, and fell out of the door and into the snow. I never understood why characters could not pull themselves together when running in horror movies, always falling on themselves. But in that moment, I did the same, and I sort of understand it now. I treaded through the thigh-high snow into the main road by exiting the complex. I sprinted, ignoring my lungs, screaming for air down the main road, only slowing down once I reached a bridge that led me to my street. Once I got inside, I sat in my bed for 2 hours, nearly shaking, before I told anyone about it. Back in the early 2000s, one Friday night, I was out with a group of buddies. We were all in high school, and everyone in this story grew up in a conservative Christian household. So there was no alcohol or drugs consumed that could potentially affect my memory of this evening or how the night played out. My friends and I were all meeting up at Jeremy's house to watch a movie that we checked out at Blockbuster. My buddy and I were in one car and arrived a few minutes ahead of the other 2 friends, which included Jeremy, instead of going inside the house and waiting for the other 2. My friend and I decided to park the car in the cul-de-sac and wait until Jeremy and the other friend arrived. We were talking and listening to music to pass the time, and I remember thinking this beat having awkward conversations with Jeremy's parents inside. A few minutes later, Jeremy and our other friend showed up, instead of getting out of the car to go inside Jeremy's house. The 2 of them just hopped in the back of the parked car that my friend and I were in. For the next couple of minutes, we were joking about how weird we were being and how it probably looked sketchy. But after a little while, we were just talking and laughing. It was a good time, and it was nice that we didn't have to keep the noise down or worry about Jeremy, his parents eavesdropping on our conversations, which probably just consisted of the girls we liked and random stuff like sports or movies. After probably 90 minutes, definitely past midnight, a white van drove up slowly and parked in the driveway of Jeremy's neighbor. We were chatting about other stuff, but all four of us were watching the van intently. The guy sat in his van for a while, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. From our vantage point, we couldn't see the driver clearly, but we didn't want to leave our car and risk having him spot us. Also, there was an unspoken feeling we all had that we needed to see who this guy was and what he was up to. After a little while, the guy emerged from the van. He appeared to be alone, and he was wearing dark clothing. He was a clean-shaven white guy in his 30s or 40s, and he had a full head of dark hair. If I saw him in the street or at a gas station, he wouldn't have stood out in any way. Jeremy said that he had never seen the guy before and that he definitely didn't live in the house. The stranger just stood next to his van in the driveway, looking squarely in our direction. We all were ducking down in the car, so he couldn't see us clearly, but we had to stay high enough in our seats to be able to watch him. I honestly never felt like we were in immediate danger, because there was 4 of us, and we were all over 6 feet tall. And we were at a pretty safe distance if he did try something. But in hindsight, if the guy had a gun, we would be in deep trouble. After a few moments, the guy turned around and walked around the front of his van, out of our sight. We then caught a glimpse of him walking in the darkness of the driveway, and then to the front porch of the house. Never looked back in our direction, and he didn't appear to be in a rush. He just walked up the front porch steps calmly to the front door. And then he just stood there. He never knocked or rang the doorbell. He was still as a statue. Every now and again tiptoeing some as if to peer into the glass at the top of the front door to see inside. His hands appeared to be empty, so he had no weapons or tools from what we could see. Now, I would describe the vibe in our car as pivoting from fun creepy when the guy was waiting in the van to, are we going to have to fight this guy or call the police? It was honestly frightening, because I didn't know what was going to happen next, or how we would all respond. It was all in this guy's hands. The guy stood at the front door for a while. In my mind's eye, it was 20 minutes. It could easily have been shorter than that in real life. But it was definitely an absurd amount of time to be waiting on a stranger's porch. We were debating on if we should honk the horn and blow our cover, just to let the guy know he's being watched, or if we should just call the police to say there was a creepy man standing outside someone's house after midnight. In hindsight, we should have called Jeremy's parents to let them know or call the cops. But we didn't do any of that. Instead, we watched and waited, all of us just flabbergasted on what he was doing. Finally, the guy walked calmly back off the porch and into his van, started it right up, and began to back out of the driveway. In our infinite wisdom, we decided to follow the guy in our car with the high beams off. It was a unanimous decision. We all felt like we needed to make sure this guy actually left the neighborhood. The man was driving super slowly, and all hope of being stealth went quickly out the window as we were clearly following him. We were the only 2 cars on the road as it was pushing 1 a.m. at this point. The van started to pick up speed as it approached the neighborhood exit. My friend picked up the pace to match. The van accelerated even more and hit the open road as it exited the neighborhood. We stopped the car at the exit and waited to ensure he didn't hit a U-turn and drive right back. I remember being relieved we weren't following the guy for any longer because that would up the ante even more. After a few minutes, we turned the car around and headed back to Jeremy's house. We all had a rush of adrenaline and were talking about how crazy it all was. We got back to the cul-de-sac and parked the car in the same spot. We emerged from the car and began to walk toward Jeremy's house. Looking back at the car, I pointed out to the guys how we were parked directly below the street lamp, so the car was clearly illuminated. We couldn't be more visible if we tried. The whole stakeout, we thought we were being incognito, but the guy could probably see all 4 of us the entire time, because we were jazzed up and much younger. We didn't sleep well that night. Every 15 to 30 minutes, we would peek outside the window that faced the neighbor's house to make sure the van didn't return. To our knowledge, it never came back. Or if it did, the guy risked being there at sunrise because we were up until at least 4 a.m. All night, we were peppering Jeremy with questions, and once again, he said that he had never seen the man or the van before. And he said there's 0 chance he lives there. He asked if he could be a relative or something, and Jeremy said no, because the man was white and the family was black. Writing this now, I'm very grateful that the neighbor family wasn't attacked, and that the guy didn't escalate things with us watching and following him. It was a creepy encounter, but no one got hurt. I do feel regret about not calling the cops with the guy's description and license plate number, which one of us wrote down pretty early on in the encounter. It would have been smart to have the cops get something on file on the guy. In addition to the night's oddities, what strikes me now is how random it was for us to be sitting outside in a parked car, and for that long. My friends and I had never hung out in one of our cars like that before, and we never did afterward either. It was a one-time thing, and we just so happened to be staying at Jeremy's, which I think I've slept over maybe 4 times over the entire course of high school. Even though it was a scary evening, I'm glad we were there and that the guy could see us. It was scary to think what would VE happened if we weren't there to bear witness.